Hey, yo, yo.
How's it going?
Children are dying and everything's great. I don't know. I know you. Again, keep talking about this shit, but like, I tried to put it away, and I did a good job. I don't watch the videos except occasionally. I'll dip into one video, watch a couple of crushed young children's heads. Then I'll stop. I won't look at a video for another, several days, and would like deliberately. I've been trying to watch as much football as possible lately, just to not think about it and just not go there with my head. And I've been pretty successful in that. First 6 weeks were brutal. I mean, I don't have to go into detail, but I was extremely emotional about it, as were a lot of people. But yeah, and then I've calmed down. But then, just today, and I guess we do have to talk about this latest stuff about the rape allegations. But so I was researching all that, and in the process, you got to see more videos and hear more testimony about what's actually happening right now as we speak. And it's, I don't know. It's such a strange thing. I have noticed that my libertarian and conservative friends are almost universally unbothered by it. I mean, they're concerned about certain aspects of the politics of it, but they don't feel emotional about it, and I've said to you, and I've said to other people and publicly here, like, I actually think that's probably better. And I think if more people were like that, we'd probably get to world peace sooner, believe it or not. But then I also think, like, if you're not going to get upset about something in the political world, I mean, if you're going to get upset about anything in politics and the political world, like, what could be more heart-wrenching? I mean, even no matter what side you're on, by the way, like, it just, I've never seen anything. And the fact that we see it, we saw a little bit of Syria. We saw that was our first taste of children under rubble, was the Syrian civil war. But of course, the media didn't cover it much at all. I mean, I barely followed it. Only when it would sort of flare up in the news, but it certainly wasn't a constant thing. So, we saw that a bit, but now it's just daily, minute by minute, hourly. It's also way more children. There were a lot of children in Syria too, but this is more concentrated. We've never seen anything like it outside of not even in a horror movie. Which horror movie has had 10,000 dead kids in it? So, I mean, what movie has had 10,000 dead kids in it? Except from a distance, we've seen movies about Vietnam. From a distance, we've seen movies about Dresden and Tokyo and Hiroshima. We've seen them we never saw the bodies, like multiple dead children lying on a street. I mean, which is like, that's normal. Mm-hmm. That's every day.
Well, my aversion to it isn't so much the emotional distress, although that's a huge part of it. I think it's bad for your spirit and soul and bad for your mental health to sift through grainy videos of unspeakable horrors and pause it and stare and like, what's going on there? That's just...
Well, I don't do that. I mean, I just look. In fact, I often don't even finish the video. In fact, I'd say actually, usually I don't even finish the video, which is just, I mean, that's how bad it is, because it's kind of what I do for a living, is look at like bad shit in video. But so does everybody these days, all the police shootings, nothing is this bad. So no, I mean, just one glimpse, like a still photo, just see what's happening. It's boom, dead kids is really hard to see, man. I don't know. Like, a lot of dead kids is really hard to see.
I mean, I think the total tally of dead warrants it. Like, if you look at, I saw a chart that like charted out the casualties of this war and compared it to Iraq, compared it to Ukraine, and it's like 10 times as much as Ukraine in like 2 months. It's 10 times as much in like a fraction of the time. And I think that's good to understand the scale of what's happening, because I think it's worth talking about on that. But my aversion to talking about it was, I don't want to be the guy ranting about Israel every week on the week for forever, because this war is going to stretch into all of 2024 and have an election year, and all my friends are going to be, I don't know all my friends, but somebody checks out my social media, finds this page, and oh, here's Michael ranting about the Jews again. Like, oh, he's gone crazy. What happened to him? I don't want that happening. And I feel a tangible. I don't know. I just feel this unease when I talk to my friends that I haven't seen in a while. I got it over the holidays. Like, they're definitely very averse to talking about politics at all. And
right. And are these your left-wing friends?
My left-wing friends. I actually have a friend who was protesting outside Anthony Blinken's house today.
Yeah, I thought so.
He ran a marathon also, and did a staged death at the end of the marathon for all the victims of Gaza, and joined a bunch of other people lying down dead with all that. So the hard left.
No, but who are you afraid of talking to about this? Which friends? Him or others?
Normies or people like young people trying to start like a professional life and not wanting to be associated with the guy who ran outside Israel.
Normies, basically.
Yeah. Normies.
Non-political people. Right? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
People who don't care about Israel or about Ukraine or about the United States for that matter, right? Politically, right? They don't think about these things, which is what I aspire to be one day, if I can somehow get a lobotomy or something. What a beautiful life that must be. I mean, honestly, until like, you know, the soldiers come to your door and yank your teenage son out and send him off to the camp or whatever. But, you know, until then, it's good to be non-political. Yeah, okay.
Well, and also the futility of restructuring the United States government to not care about Israel at this point. Like,
oh, see, I think you're wrong there. I mean, I've had some arguments online with people about this. Some very smart people. I forget who was it. A couple of people who were like sort of prominent intellectuals. Who was that? Anyway, oh, Doug Lane, Sub-Zero Books guy. God, he was going on and on about how it's never going to change. And I showed him these polls, you know, of people your age who pretty much hate Israel. And there was like that shocking poll that showed, what was it? Some very large percentage of people your age, I think under 30, under 34, who said something about they favored giving Israel over to Hamas. Like, they're like truly pro-Hamas. I mean, I needed to look further into this study, but that sounded a little fishy. But is that possible that like a significant percent, I don't think it was a majority, but it was some significant percentage of people like in their 20s, basically, who are actually pro-Hamas, which I never see. Almost never see actual pro-Hamas statements. I've seen like 3 total, like at various protests around the world. But is that true? You think that's possible? Like,
I mean, I think if you're taught anti-colonialism in college, that's the only analysis that you can put on top of what's happening in Israel, and it maps pretty plainly.
So it's the percentage of your age group that went to college, liberal arts college. They went to a liberal arts college, not a tech school, not a trade school, not an A&M, none of that, you know. But like where you and I went, like places that liberal arts, you know, where they teach humanities, where they teach the humanities, and humanities are taken seriously, which have been absolutely 100% taken over by post-colonial theory. And I happen to subscribe to a whole bunch of post-colonial theory, by the way. I think some of its branches and edges I hate and they suck, but boy, I think that the general thesis put forward by Edward Said is dead on. I mean, let's talk about this because we talk about race a lot. Orientalism is the term that Edward Said introduced, describing essentially Western racism, Western racist attitudes toward Arabs in the Arab world and Muslims. And there's a lot of parallels with, of course, Western views of Africans and blacks, but has its own particular flavor. And I gotta say, I think that's at play in this, and I think I've seen actual racism in the last few months around this issue, and I think it explains a lot. I mean, it's the only way, actually, I can explain a lot of people's views on this from a general apathy, I have to say. I mean, I'm cool with like not caring about people in general. Honestly, I do. I mean, like people outside your immediate world. In fact, that's kind of my politics. In fact, I wish people, that's what I was saying about like more cold-heartedness and be better. But I mean, if you're going to care about people at all outside of your immediate sphere, outside of people you know personally, seems to me this would be the time to care. But no, I mean, I don't know. There's also, I mean, there's the geopolitical considerations, but those can be made absent or entirely separate from any concern about Palestinian children being dead, right? Which is kind of what your thesis has been, which again, I think is a super healthy thesis. And that's the one I want to put forward. The one I want to put forward to Americans is simply this. There's only one question, and this really is for everybody. This is for Israelis. This is for Netanyahu. This is for everybody in the world. The only question at hand is whether America and Americans will continue to support financially and militarily the state of Israel. That's it. Like the whole game is up if the US walks out. It's it. Israel's on its own. Good luck. Good luck with those Arabs. They love you now. If we don't have your back, it's what? You're gonna go nuclear on them? I mean, how's that gonna end for you? So, I mean, the Zionist game is really on a precipice. The Israeli project is really on a precipice right now. I said this on Twitter today, and I got retweeted by Mike Cernovich, actually. Although that's who it was. That was the second one, right? It was Doug Lane on the left saying, no, it'll never change. U.S. will always support Israel. And then on the right today, it was Cernovich. I mean, he was nice about it. He was just saying he thinks it is permanent because it's kind of a weak argument on Mike's part. I mean, I thought he just said during a hot war, during times of war, military might is what is determinative. And I was like, sure, but the war is not forever. I mean, this hot war will not last forever. Anyway, I don't know. I think there's been a lot of racism I mean, I've been really truly searching my head for 3 months now for some political project, even like some state I'm a member of, that I think it would be worth killing 10,000 kids for. Like, the only thing would be protecting, like if it meant protecting like myself, my children, my best friends, you know what? I don't know, maybe I'd kill 10,000 kids for that. But any political project, which is what a nation state is, like, I understand, but most Israelis think that they would be either murdered or exiled if the Arabs gained a majority, if they gained the vote and then a majority, et cetera, if they gained power. I think that's far from the case. I don't think that would happen at all. But anyway, a political project, a nation state, even one I lived in, I mean, right. The survival of the nation state I lived in, would I kill 10,000 kids for that? That's what they're saying is at stake. I don't even think that's at stake. I don't think the Jews in the state of Israel will all have to go or be killed. But even if it were true, they're saying let's say it is true. They would all have to go back to their grandparents' homes in Europe, basically. Homelands in Europe. Even if that were true, no, I wouldn't kill 10,000. I don't know. Would you? I mean, would you?
No.
Okay. All right. I mean, it's cool. I'm totally, as you know me, look, I'm the man for extreme radical, super radical arguments. So I'm here for it. But like, and I got to tell you, and I've been saying this to myself for 3 months now, like every day I feel like such a Christian. And what's the other word? Well, definitely, I mean, Christian is really it, because I have this and I think that's why I'm so good at critiquing so-called humanitarianism, internationalist, globalist nonsense, which always ends up getting us into world wars. that I've been critiquing and forever and ever. I think I can understand that stuff and critique it so well because I am that person. Like inside of me is a motherfucking imperialist, man. Hell yeah. Like my feelings, my heart like wants to go jump into Gaza right now and like fix it. You know, whatever it is that needs to be done, I will do it. You know, that's like the core of my heart. And I think that I'm sure that describes most people who have feelings about these things. Yeah, most people in politics, I think, are imperialists at heart, right? Some of us are simply conscious of it and see it as negative and then try to control our own imperialist impulses and then try to control other people's imperialist impulses. But it's kind of working against, I don't want to say my nature, but certainly my feelings. Oh God, yeah. Like I've wanted to, like, I can't wait to go to Gaza. And I was like 2 weeks ago, I was telling you like, oh, we got to have a school in Gaza to teach the kids how to do their own media. And I was like half serious, but I was half serious. I don't know. Maybe that's not a bad thing. I don't know. Maybe if I went to Gaza, I would discover how wonderful the Palestinian people are, how welcoming and generous they are, how misunderstood they are, what victims of oppression they are, what perfect martyrs they are. And they would serve as an example and a model to me, and I would change my life modeling myself after my Palestinian brothers and sisters who have been so maligned. I will move to the West Bank, set up shop, teach Palestinian children how to tell their stories to the world, and then I will die content. There's the whole, there it is, guys. That's the entire left wing and Christian, often left wing and Christian humanitarian. That is the soul.
That's Thaddeus Russell's white man's burden right there is to.
I'm describing it. I'm saying it's in me, but I'm saying it's in all of them. Mm-hmm. All the Samantha Powers, even all the Max Blumenthal's. I mean, I think even like the left, people I love, who I agree with completely, who seem so cynical about some things. I think ultimately, yeah, we know what would be better. A better way to organize people in Israel. It's a place I've never been to. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. You know, but yeah, I just restrain myself from doing that. And I try to have a politics that's a repudiation of that. It's a very funny thing. Mm-hmm. I can't think of an anti-imperialist who wouldn't have that really in his or her heart. Still like an imperialist impulse.
I think it's like that which you resist persists. I think anybody who founds their ideology as oppositional to something sees that in them, sees a reflection of that in them, and that's why it resonates so much to be oppositional to that. For example, anarchists are the ones who won't shut up about the government. Like,
right.
Your standard normie who votes down ticket Republican, probably, or down ticket Democrat even, probably talks and interacts with the state way less and has a much more harmonious, minimal relationship with the government than your average anarchist who is whining about cops and whining about this regulation or that regulation.
Every socialist is from a wealthy family. Same thing, right? From at least a middle class family and often an upper class family. And I mean every one. I've known a lot, and every single one came from like I'd say my mother and father were probably the poorest and most working class of all the socialists I've known. And it was like my mother's father was a country doctor, so they were like the middle class or even upper class of their little town in Illinois, Jewish doctor. And then my dad was like a preacher's son, you know, so middle class, like totally. They were like that, and they were like the bottom. Like all their comrades in the International Socialist Organization, they were all heirs and heiresses and shit. Like steel heirs and shit. I mean, like unreal amount. So yeah, there's all kinds of contradictions. There's self-hatred going on. That's what it's all about. The socialists who hate capitalists when their parents are capitalists and when they were raised as capitalists with all the privileges of wealthy capitalists. It's the same probably as my hatred of imperialists.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that my cause happens to be righteous.
Yeah.
Theirs is not. That's the difference. Everyone can understand that.
Well, both imperialists and anti-imperialists deride their arguments from this is what will help those people for the most part. Like, this is
okay, so that's actually not that. So that's half true. So that's what, yes, was said by damn near. I would say that was the major argument by every anti-imperialist and anti-imperialist organization from 1898 when the movement was formed, until Ron Paul. And then because it was all about, oh my God, what we're doing to the Filipinos, to the German, to the French, to the Germans, to the this, to the Japanese, to the Vietnamese. It was always mostly concerned with those poor brown people, or sometimes white people. But Ron Paul flipped that shit. Ron Paul is the one who put forward the most brilliant anti-war argument ever made, most brilliant anti-war, anti-imperialist argument ever made. And I'm not actually a Ron Paul fan. I mean, I'm not that person. I just think, and even a lot of socialists and lefties love Ron Paul's argument on this too, by the way. It's widely loved on sort of the dissident side of politics. It's because it makes it about self-interest. And you're not going to win anything unless you appeal to self-interest. And also, anything other, and here's the point, Michael, anything other than appeal to self-interest is imperialist by definition. If you're making an argument about the people over there, that's making an argument about the people over there. You don't know them. And that's what Ron Paul did. He offered the most convincing argument, which is that these wars by America and this empire of America are bad for Americans, period. Ron Paul has barely said a word, I mean, except as vehicles of blowback about Palestinian kids or Iraqi kids or women in Afghanistan who were shot by special forces, No, he said those kids and women that the United States is killing, they're going to want to kill us. And that was proven on 9/11. And from that argument, an entire movement was formed of, I would say, somewhere around 1 million people. Because how many votes did he get total overall? Like if you combine all the primary votes? And it was that argument. It was his blowback argument. That's what I'm describing. Ron Paul's blowback argument, which he sort of borrowed from Chalmers Johnson, but I read Chalmers Johnson's books on this stuff, and they're weak. They're not even that good, I have to say. The basic thesis, of course, is generally correct, but Ron Paul makes a much better argument than Chalmers Johnson, who was an academic. He was an academic historian, basically in my field. It's a weird book, actually, the Johnson book. It sort of doesn't make sense in a lot of ways, but he actually doesn't marshal nearly the evidence he could or should for it. But anyway, Ron Paul makes it from that argument. I think it was that argument alone, much more than the end of Fed stuff, that created the Ron Paul movement of when did it start? 2000s. 2008, I guess, was the big first election, right? When he went national, when he went big. Yeah. And that movement changed American politics. It changed a big chunk of American culture, and everybody, almost everybody seemingly who listens to my show is a Ron Paul kid in some way or another. That generation, they're in their mid 30s, not every, but I'd say the bulk, probably 2/3 is my guess of my audience, is from that movement. And that movement came from that one single argument. Ask them what inspired them. Was it end the Fed? Sure, they're totally passionate about that. Nah, it was his stuff about the war. And a lot of them are vets, in particular Iraq war vets. God, how many Iraq war veteran Ron Paul fanatics have I known? I mean, countless. Love those guys.
Oh, he led active duty and veteran fundraising by a mile in both 2008 and 2012. He was,
wow.
Yeah, he was number one.
Yeah, man. Yeah, right. That's right. I remember that. Yeah, him and Trump. Interestingly, the two most anti-war. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, Trump is not close to Paul on this, but he's still second. He's absolutely the second most anti-war major presidential candidate of my lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, I still think Pat Buchanan deserves his due.
Oh, right. Pat Buchanan, of course. Yeah, I take that back. Right. Pat Buchanan is absolutely number two, but he's right next to Ron Paul. I mean, Pat Buchanan, the only problem with Pat Buchanan is he's probably racist. And that sort of animates some of his analysis. I could be wrong about that. It sure seems like it though. Whereas Ron Paul, I think he might personally be racist, but I don't care because his politics and his political statements, he keeps it real clean. I looked for it because when I started hanging out with libertarians, I was like, wait, I heard about you people and I heard about this Ron Paul person, and I spent some time and I looked at the Ron Paul newsletters and all the rest of it. And I read Reason Magazine's endless diatribes against Ron Paul and his racism. And all I concluded was he's probably racist personally, but their politics are not. Their politics are clean. They're very disciplined, the Ron Paul folks at all those economists at keeping out of race. They don't talk about it. And that's why they stick to economics too, I think. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that some of those guys are not just Ron Paul, but I can think of several right offhand who I'm pretty damn sure are racist because I've seen them say stuff that pretty much only a racist would say. But so what? The Anti-Imperialist League, our founding fathers, founded in part by Mark Twain in 1898 in opposition to the Spanish-American War, but against the idea of an American empire overseas. God, if they had won, we wouldn't have any of this shit. They were the origins, the founders of the movement. It was Mark Twain, the Socialist Party, basically, and a whole bunch of Southern Democrat, segregationist, straight up racist senators and congressmen were the founders of the Anti-Imperialist League. So racism, Pat Buchanan, it goes back. The American First movement.
Well, the clip I always reference is super obscure and maybe damning that I know this, but I always reference this. Terrible Tommy Metzger was on the Wally George show. Wally George was like a political, what's the guy's name? Just daytime television.
Tom Metzger, the Nazi.
Yeah, Tom Metzger, Terrible Tommy Metzger, the Nazi, the inspiration.
Actual Nazi, like member of the Nazi Party, right? Right.
Yeah, American Nazi Party. Started his own Nazi groups. He's the inspiration for the old man in American History X.
Oh, which I've never seen.
Oh, yeah?
I've never seen that, or people always are blown away by this, or what's it called? The Brad Pitt movie, Ed Norton movie that everybody's Fight Club. I've never seen that either. No. People are always amazed by that. But yeah,
dang, you're Gen X and you haven't seen those staples.
Yeah, I know. Those are like, I'm older Gen X. Those are newer Gen X. But anyway, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a clip of him on daytime television during the Reagan years. Wally George brought him out to say, look, here's this horrible racist Nazi. Let's get a crowd full of people to yell at him. And they were calling him a racist, and they were all Ronald Reagan guys. And Tommy Metzger said, who's the racist here? Ronald Reagan is killing people in South America and Central America. Ooh. I'm trying to leave them alone. You're causing all these. Yeah. I
love racists. No, I do. And that's one of the reasons. I mean, I'm talking about the real racists like Tommy Metzger and, and like the founders of the Anti-Imperialist League. Their argument, that's beautiful, by the way. Their argument was that what happens with an American empire? We go mix with these other brown and black people all around the world that we don't want nothing to do with, and they end up coming to our shores. It ends up becoming a bridge. Our battleships end up becoming a bridge that they walk over, and lo and behold, what happened? In every colonial power, go to their capital city today. and it's a racist nightmare. Europe is a racist nightmare. New York City, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and San Francisco are a racist nightmare. Those anti-imperialist racists of the turn of the 20th century, my fucking heroes, because you know what? I don't care what the motivation is actually anymore. I used to not associate with Pat Buchanan deliberately, and he actually posted an article I wrote a long time ago on the front of his website, and I almost asked him to take it down, but I didn't. But yeah, no, I'm no longer, no, I don't care anymore.
I think I mean, everybody who's known him personally wouldn't call him a racist, but
so Pat Buchanan has the single best reputation personally of anybody in politics that I've ever heard of. Like anybody from like radical weirdo dissidents to like senators and presidents to everybody, all the media people. Pat Buchanan, people talk about him, and I've never met him. I don't know. I've never talked to him. Like they say he is the kindest, sweetest, warmest human being they've ever known, like consistently. So that's not incompatible with being a racist, by the way.
Yeah.
I know this for a fact because some of the people I love extremely dearly were outright racists.
Well, that's all that matters to me is like ideas about race and IQ, and like if you want to weigh certain races as superior, or if certain races are incapable of advancing the way that we want them, the way that Westerners want them to, that's a legitimate question that is up for debate, I think. But all that matters for me with racism is how do you treat other people personally. And there's a joke in the online community that, wow, the racist community is so diverse, and you can find people of all races and all backgrounds who have varying opinions about what race is and which races rank where, but you have people from all backgrounds being racist, and they're actually very welcoming and intellectually curious.
Right. Yeah.
You don't care what race you are as long as you're also racist, is the joke.
My chief value is curiosity. So if you're curious about the other race or other races, we're cool. I mean, if you're curious about them, like in terms of, you know, biopolitical population control, you know, if you're just like, you want to do studies of like, you know, the forest cover to find out, you know, how fast the napalm will spread. No, but like, if you're just like genuinely just curious what these people do over there, we're cool. And if you come away from it thinking, oh yeah, they're racially inferior, they're biologically inferior to me and my people for sure, I don't care. Like, as long as you don't want to start trouble.
Well, also, I think Pat Buchanan's allegations of racism amount to him being pessimistic that immigrants from South and Central America and immigrants from the Middle East would assimilate. But that is a very legitimate question. When Trump proposed a Muslim ban, Louis Farrakhan was on board with it because he said, "We've bombed these places into oblivion. Of course, they're going to hate us." So
Pat Buchanan may not be a racist. He is a monoculturalist, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But that's what he certainly is. He believes in and wants to uphold what he sees as, or what he considers to be, American culture. Now, of course, that's funny in itself, because what do you mean by that?
But here's the thing. He wants to uphold that for America. Imperialists want to make that the standard for the whole world.
Well, right. He wants America to be as it is, which that in it, I guess. And that's what's cool. I do hear that in like Steve Bannon. Because I've, you know, studied him for a couple of years pretty closely, and like was always listening for that kind of thing. And like what I got from Bannon was actually a really genuine and very consistent, I will say that, defense of, and I would say politics of, America as it is. Like the people who are currently in it, or at least have been in it in recent past, you know, not the new immigrants, but like people who've been here since like at least World War II or something like that, right? Which includes like all the blacks, basically. All the descendants of slaves, for sure, every damn one of them. And he's really clear about that. And that might be Pat Buchanan's politics too, which meaning there's no interest in expelling the blacks, or or like the Mexican, what, the Tejanos, I think they're called, in Texas, the incredible like Mexican upper class in Texas. It's still there, like that the original rancheros that own the original ranches there. Those people, are like,
Well, also,
yes, that's where they are.
if you're talking about Mexicans in the American Southwest, you're talking about a land that was Mexico for a long time.
No,
So,
I know.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
well aware, but I mean, like, I'm just saying, like, racists, like I don't know, Richard Spencer's or whoever, like the actual ethno-nationalists, like, they would want to expel or separate from those people.
Yeah.
There's not even talk of separating.
Yeah.
I've never heard that in Pat Buchanan or Steve Bannon at all, separating from doing any kind of racial separation whatsoever. And he has blacks on his show like every day. Blacks. It's funny. What was Trump called it? Oh, my African Americans.
My African American friend. Yeah.
My African American. But he's also said something like, he used what was it? A preposition or something, like, what was it? That objectified them an extra step, which was really funny. Like his taco thing, taco bowl thing. That was great. I love that. See, I'm not racist. I love my Mexicans. I love their taco bowls, which are so Mexican, by the way. Totally, the taco bowl was created in the mountains of Chihuahua by peasant women fighting the conquistadors. They ground the corn for the. No, they were invented by Taco Bell, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. The language policing against Trump on race is, the quote in the chat, here's my African American, was like,
he had a second one though. I know that one, but I swear I think he had a second one where he said something similar that was really funny. Anyway,
but I'm just saying that's small peanuts compared to what Biden has said on race.
Okay. So racism can be healthy, or it can be useful, or it can be peaceful.
Well, if
it can be anti-war, is what we're saying.
Yeah. Like, I mean, part of my dispassionate stance towards the Israel-Palestine conflict comes from what you could call racism, in that, like, I feel no connection. Like, everybody's talking about this issue has to bring up their Jewish ancestry, which I have none of. I have no Palestinian ancestry. I mean, maybe on my Italian side, somebody, but like, again, like,
but the thing, well, see, I was thinking your Wiggerness is what would have like made you pro Pal, but no, you didn't go there.
Maybe, but
you're supposed to.
Yeah.
If you like the blacks, you love the Palestinians.
I don't have Zach De La Rocha Wigger energy anymore in me.
No. Just the drumming, huh?
Just Limp Bizkit and Kid Rock on this.
Shit.
Yeah.
The what do you call them? They discredit our race. Those two.
Metal,
the Wigger race. They are the what do you call that? They're the shame of our race. The Wigger race. Kid Rock.
They're our pride, man. I think they're some of the greatest.
You think so?
They're some of the greatest American entertainers that this country's ever produced. And
well, man, it's the Wiggerness that I'm calling into question, especially about Kid Rock.
Well,
I mean, I guess
Kid Rock's first album, it's a total it's totally in line with the Renegade Theory of history. It's all about, this is for it's like, this is for the underclass, no matter what color you are. This is for everybody living at Trailer Park. This is for everybody who's on methadone. This is everybody using a prostitute. This is everybody who wants to party. Let's rock out America.
This is why I hang out with you, because I get corrected in essential ways. I needed to know that. I now need to go listen to I'm Sorry Kid. I'm sorry. I take it back. I love you now. Also, he had sex with Pam Anderson in her prime and took videos of it. So for that, oh no, that was her other guy, Tommy Lee. Awesome videos, by the way. I remember Kid Rock. I remember Howard Stern saying to him on the show, on Howard Stern shows, he's like, "So, how is it?" He's like, "What? You're having sex with Pam Anderson? How is it?" He's like, "Oh, it's great, man. It's awesome." All right. Back to Palestine.
Oh well, I was gonna.
So
Yeah.
no, but really, no. But hang on. This is an important point, and we presented about the most rigorous and historically astute argument about this, about the relationship between racism and anti-imperialism. It's not what you think. It's not what
Yes.
people would ever expect. It's the opposite. Racism in other contexts is, I think, quite bad, like super duper bad, actually. But in this case, when it comes to foreign relations, I'd say more often than not, it's positive, because people they don't necessarily want to go into go into the other neighborhood and start shit with the other race. They just want to not be around them. That's the main thing. That's the main thing racists feel, is they just want is separation. They want separation. They don't want to see them. There's not like a there's not an again it's not there's not an usually there's not an imperialist edge to racism, except here it is, my friend, among liberals. And then they take racism and make it into an imperialist ethos, which is what racial liberalism is today, which is we need to stop the war in Gaza because they're brown. Right? We are opposed to the Iraq war because they're brown people and because the government of the United States is white. They racialize everything, and they make blacks into the victim and browns into the victims they need to save.
I'm sorry. Who does this?
Liberals.
Liberals. Okay.
So they made racism into an imperialist project, right? That's their racism. It starts with Brown v. Board of Education. We need to get these Negroes into our schools to train them to be good citizens and good soldiers. That means then everybody's like, oh, you love Negroes. And you're like, yes, we do. We're going to make them just like us. So they took their own racism and they made it into this sort of Christian savior humanitarian project, which we know today as liberal internationalism or humanitarianism. That's what it is. It's all racialized. It's all racist.
The people who I've heard I've heard recently people lamenting over the poor young girls in Afghanistan who won't be able to get an education after they turn 12.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, that's the feminist version of it, actually. That's the gender. They also did it with gender. They took it's sexist, right? It's like women need to be protected by big, strong men. Like
our big strong men, not their big strong men.
Like like the U.S. Marines. Yeah. Would say what? Oh, I know. It's amazing. Like, well, this is the deepest and oldest critique we've been making. I mean, or I've been making, like, about the conservatism, the reactionary politics of the left. It's wild how actually they often end up looking like what they are repudiating. They end up being the racists and the sexists, and the patriarchs and the capitalists. And I mean, it's incredible. They are like the inversion of themselves. And this is another example. Yeah, no, I mean, it's so much of the rhetoric. I mean, it just so happens that in Palestine, their choice of victim, race victim, coincides with, I guess, my choice or something, of not race victim, but victims in another way, who are, of course, also because they're victims, have all these important consequences flowing from them. But yeah. So race works in ways that people do not see. In fact, it works in opposite ways when it comes to foreign policy and international relations. The racists generally have been on the good side, and the so-called anti-racists have actually been racist in what they're doing. It's kind of wild.
No, yeah, they both. Well, it's like the C.S. Lewis quote that Michael Malice likes to bring up all the time, that somebody oppressing you for your own good will oppress you way more than somebody who's just oppressing you to oppress you, because they'll do it with the clearness of their conscience. And that's what liberals do.
Yep.
So Yeah, I mean, I guess the egalitarianism of believing that these people aren't who they say they are, they're really actually like us, that their differences can be overcome through force is the liberal project, I think. And yeah, so I'm I guess we're not racist and that we're pluralists and that we believe, or that Muslim societies have every right to exist like our societies do. And at the very least, it's not our problem and it's theirs to figure out choices about educating young girls. That's their decision to make, not ours.
Man, I saw a video of, it was an amazing video, and I've seen nothing like it before, of someone simply walking through Gaza City in September. And they just walk right through downtown Gaza City. And it's like a 20-minute video. It's like, and it's just, that's all it is. It's just with their camera facing forward. They just walk right through the middle of Gaza City. This is right before the war. And I'm staring at this thing and I'm like, because I'm fascinated. I was like, what is, and I would imagine a lot of people are curious about what life was really like there. And number one, you see how modern it was. It looks like, I would say, the same level of what I saw, what you see in Mexico, like much, not all of Mexico. Some of Mexico is actually upper class and first world entirely, but like it's kind of it looks sort of like Mexico level, meaning second world. It's certainly not the poorest place I've ever seen, not even close. And you don't see destitution, you don't see garbage on the streets, you don't see, I mean, actually, I was thinking it looks a lot better than Oakland. It really does. That's number one. Now, people wonder why. How could there be any sort of wealth in an enclosed, besieged place? It's because of all the humanitarian aid. So yes, Israel has effectively put a wall around the place since 2006, but zillions of, I don't know the number, but some huge amount of money has come in from all over the world, by the way. So the UN, the United States too, has given tons of, so that's number one.
Well, and that aid helps us maintain that open air prison with a clear conscience.
Yeah. No, yeah, totally. Yeah. But see, I was getting to the point you're making about like our views on Muslim nations and their right to exist and like what our position is on this, the existence of these other societies with these totally different rules in them. The second thing I noticed or just really was captivated by was like what it's really like on the street in a Muslim country or place in terms of the women. And every single woman, and this is 20 minutes of walking through downtown Gaza. So how many hundreds of women I saw, every single solitary one was wearing a full hijab. And I'd never seen that before. I've never been in a Muslim country. I've never even been in any place like that at all. I mean, I've seen videos of other Arab countries where that's not the case. In fact, like Egypt, if you go to Egypt, you don't see hijabs at all. And a lot of Arab countries, it's actually not normal. But so, I mean, I guess that's evidence of Hamas imposing Sharia law, I suppose, or it could just be, I don't know, it could be organic to the Palestinian culture at this point. I don't know how deeply committed they were to Sharia as of like the 80s or 90s, although I imagine it is Hamas imposing it, at least to some extent. But then my third thought, and this is coming back to what you're saying there, like, what is my view of other Muslim countries? Like, what do I want my relationship to be with the existence of this other place with these other people and weird rules? And like, should it be, celebrating it? Oh, because of diversity and everything that's different is great. No, that's dumb. Should it be like just curiosity, like I was talking about before, like the 18th century explorers' curiosity? Oh, look at these interesting savages over there. Put them maybe in a zoo or like the museum. Or is it to look for things that might be, possible alternatives? And and this is amazing for Thaddeus Russell to say this, but I'm thinking like those hijabs, like, damn. First of all, I bet a lot of the women like it. In fact, I know they do. Not all, but I know a lot do. And number two, I bet a lot of the men like it because women are distracting. And if you're not a man, you don't know what I'm talking about. But it's just very distracting, and it's very bad for business. Women's bodies, seeing women's bodies is bad for functioning. A functioning civilization. This is what Sigmund Freud taught us about civilization. It requires the repression of sexuality. You can't build anything if you're thinking about sex. You can't build civilization. You can't maintain civilization if you're thinking about sex. The less you think about sex, the more you're going to think about your job, your business, your work, your mission, your duty. It's true. And it also looked very orderly, very, very orderly, Gaza City. And again, it looked much cleaner and better, far more orderly than Oakland or San Francisco or LA or New York City. I mean, truly, I'm not exaggerating. I mean, people can find this video. Tell me if I'm wrong. And I'm just wondering if that kind of outright statist repression, stuff that I, of course, am like 1000% opposed to and always have been. I'm wondering, whether life there under that might in some ways be preferable.
Well, they might win the demographic war, which in that these places have a lot more children, and they're immigrants wherever they go. Continue the practice of large families.
But what does that have to do with the repression?
Well, the repression creates big families. It creates a discipline to create big families, and people who don't reproduce. Well,
why is that? Oh, okay, because you're not because you're only having sex with one woman.
Yeah, and,
right.
Yeah, just the long code of sexual discipline is all geared towards the family. They have families like averaging 9 kids, something like that, way above replacement rate. And when it comes to long-term civilizations, usually people who practice discipline are the ones that live the longest and tell the longest story.
Yeah, it's enforcing monogamy, right? I mean, that's what's going on there. It's a heavy-handed enforcement of monogamy. You're being forced to be monogamous. And then, of course, that means you're very likely to have children.
And Christians used to do this too. There used to be a lot more modesty in Christian civilization until the Enlightenment came around.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just wonder if you just removed all the billboards and all the ads with all the sexy pictures and videos and covered every woman from head to toe. I mean, what would that feel like? Would it feel like The Handmaid's Tale? Right? Would it feel just like a totalitarian, heavy, dark blanket suffocating you slowly? Or would it feel actually freer? And I got to say, the people walking in Gaza, which is, famously not the best place to live in the world, they didn't seem all that unhappy to me. I don't know. They looked just as chipper as anybody in the United States. It's an interesting thing. I mean, because Americans almost universally, Americans who are not Muslim think that shit's barbaric. Even conservatives think that shit's barbaric, right? Republicans just look at that and like, oh my God, that's why we need to bomb those people, because they do that to their women. I just think there's so much that's the opposite of what we think. I mean, I know that they've taken polls of women in Muslim countries and who, like, huge percentages have said they favor the hijab. We know this. Not in Iran, but I think in other parts of the Muslim world they do. And in parts of Iran, they certainly do. Just not all Iranian women embrace it. But Iran has always had a strong Western culture in it. Always. They could never eradicate it. They could never get rid of the Western culture there. So that explains that. But like Dugin.
Yeah.
Right. Dugin has a big point here. To him, as we said a few weeks ago, he's been making the argument that Gaza represents a war not just between the United States and Palestine or Israel and Palestine. The war in Gaza to Dugin is a war. What does he say? A war between.
Well, it's against the entire Muslim world and the collective West.
No, what are the words he uses though? It's a war between what does he call the West now? He calls us not debauchery, worse than that. What is it? Like it's a war between debauchery but it's a different word. Degeneracy, but not quite. And what does he call it? Something. He has words, but it's a clash of civilizations. It's a war between civilizations. It's a war between belief systems and fundamental values. And the West, which Israel represents, of course, because it's been a colonial outpost of Britain and the United States since its existence, to Dugan and many people is characterized right now as a land of debauchery, degeneracy, LGBT freaks, transsexual pedophiles, and people who love them. I guess, I mean, yeah.
Well,
and so Palestine, judging by just how it looks on the street, he's right, represents, what would you call it? Orthodoxy. I don't know. Old ways. What would you call that? I mean, the pre-modern. What's going on in Palestine, of course, is only as old as Islam, which is not forever. Islam has a date. It's not even that old. I mean, it's not even as old as the other two big religions. So it's also funny when you talk to reactionaries. It's like, well, Dugan, like why is Islam like traditional? Why is that traditional? But like, gay rights is not traditional. Like gay rights is 50 years old, and Islam is, what is it now? Since, 1,500, something like that years. 1,500 years ish. So why is one, why not go to what was going on in the Mesopotamian era? Shouldn't we be doing what they were doing then?
I mean, it's not an argument for old versus new necessarily, right. But it's this postmodern idea that every country has their own truth that they have a right to.
No, you know what it is, man. You know what it is. Dugan is an anti-imperialist. That's what that is.
Yeah,
he said so. I think he said it to me, but I think I've heard him say this, multiple times. Like I think I made him say this actually. When you boil it down, that's what he ultimately is. And I think he and I said that together. We were like, oh yeah, that's my politics too. At the end of the day, that's what I most care about is anti-imperialism. And he is, I would say, in some ways, one of maybe the preeminent, most important philosophers of anti-imperialism. He puts forward a hell of an argument. But that's how he sees it. He sees the West as the imperialists, and I think he's generally correct about that. Since the Caliphate, certainly since the fall of the Ottoman Empire, it's been the West being the primary imperialist aggressor. And so what does he call the Orthodox world? I mean, that's kind of what I would call it, for lack of a better word, which would be, Russia, Eastern Europe generally, or parts of Eastern Europe, I should say, mostly Russia, and certainly the Muslim world. I mean, Dugan has said that Russia and the Muslim world need to form an alliance, and they partly have with Iran and Syria, and they're trying to move now more into actually Israel. So it's a way to see this war. It's a different lens, and you see it in a different way, and you see what other massive stakes are at hand here. This is Avengers Endgame kind of shit. I mean, from the geopolitical level, it's Avengers Endgame because you have battleships and aircraft carriers all around that region. You have multiple hot battles going on, hot wars going on. Iraq. What even got bombed today in Iraq? Something got bombed in Iraq today. Iran got bombed. Lebanon got bombed. Beirut got bombed just in the last 3 days. And Yemen got bombed, and Yemen is bombing ships all around the Red Sea. This stuff's not even, I haven't even talked about Gaza yet.
Yeah.
This is all happening right now. Oh, then Syria. There's U.S. military bases in Syria and Iraq that are getting bombed daily since the war started. And there has been some retaliation too. The U.S. has shot some missiles at those, not into Iran, but I guess they did. What happened today in Iran? I don't even. Was it Israel? Do we know? Maybe no one's said so. But something got bombed in Iran today or yesterday. But yeah, so it's just all over the place. That's the geopolitical Avengers Endgame that's going on a maybe even larger scale. That's what Dugan is introducing to us, an even larger scale from which to look at this war. So it's now, and I think he's right in some way, at least. This is it. This is, whether modernity wins, man. This is, I mean, not just Gaza, but like Ukraine and Gaza are the two fronts of that war.
Yeah. Well, baby. China and Taiwan might open up this year. So.
And then Taiwan, although China, I don't know what Dugan exactly thinks about China. I'm not clear on that, but
he's pro BRICS, period. He just wants.
No, I know that, but I bet I mean, I would imagine he's ambivalent about China. I think, because they've been in the pocket of the West or at least they've been collaborating with the West until recently. So I don't know. I can't think he would love them too much, but well,
I mean, I think his main project is to build a world that is completely independent of the West. And
he sees, he does absolutely see China as part of the coalition that I'm talking about here, right? It's not, so it's both, but I just don't know if he would see them as as part of the spiritual coalition so much.
Mm-hmm.
He really sees Russian Orthodoxy and Arab Muslim Orthodoxy as a necessary partnership. Russians and Muslims need to get together, and he's right. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a powerful axis, just them alone, and that's kind of what Russia's working on in part. I don't know if it's because of Dugan, but that is his idea. So, yeah, if Palestine falls, if Gaza falls, if those people are expelled, and Israeli settlements are put up in Gaza, that won't be the end of the war, but it will be another major loss for, what do you want to call it? The Orthodoxy, the old world. It'll be another major victory for modern Western imperialism. And maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. My view is it's lots of good and lots of bad.
But I don't know. If that happens, at what cost? Also, I don't think I'd like to live in Israel after that happens. And I see this conflict as weakening and stretching the resources of Israel right now. Do you see the polling data that 15% of Israelis support Netanyahu right now, or think that he should continue as president?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the scariest pieces of this, is that everyone knows this too. Like, everyone knows that Netanyahu was about to go down big time right on October 7th, and that he clearly needs this war. He needs it to continue, and he needs it to be successful, which is impossible to be successful. So he needs it to continue just to save his own political skin. And this is like the most political cat in the world. I mean, dude's more political than Bill Clinton. He's been prime minister off and on since 1997, something like that, since the 90s. 96 when I was in grad school, like way back. So that means he has a personal stake in just extending the war, period.
Yeah, they're predicting it to last all of 2024. Like, Israel is planning on being at war for all of 2024.
Well, they're saying contradictory things. So there have been a few statements that it's going to take a year or two. There have been a few statements that it's going to be months. And then now the latest thing, which they announced formally either today or yesterday, was that they will be withdrawing some troops. They're going to be pulling out troops from Gaza. And I think the IDF actually said it's because of the U.S. insisting on it. Mm-hmm. Now, not everyone believes this, but this is what Israel says. That Israel, I mean, Every government lies. The United States, man, the United States government has made lies that changed the course of the 20th century and resulted in the deaths of millions of people. So, I mean, the U.S. government is certainly the champion of mendacity, but boy, the Israeli government really has a tendency to put it on thick. And anybody who's watched the propaganda coming out of Gaza, it's just, I mean, the Jewish stereotypes that they are supporting is just one of the things that pisses off Jewish anti-Zionists, especially. It's like they're taking it's like the stereotype of the Jewish trickster who gets one over on the goyim.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's the soul of the Jewish stereotype, is like he's this guy who comes in town and he figures out what the goyim want, and then he goes and like buys something for real cheap and sells it to the goyim for a markup, because the goyim, you know, the non-Jews, the Gentiles, they don't, you know, they're dumber than he is. He's smart and he knows them better than they know themselves. And he ends up taking over the neighborhood and maybe the town. You know, the money he gets from ripping them off with these high prices, he then puts into politics and he buys the town leadership, government. That's it. That's the soul of the Jewish stereotype. And that's what the fucking IDF and Netanyahu government are doing. I mean, that's how they're acting. They're acting like that guy.
Netanyahu has always bragged about how easy it is to manipulate American politicians.
Yeah, the fucking American goyim. I mean, my Lord of mercy. I mean, the American goyim have been like the other side of that stereotype, the goyim getting taken advantage of. Yeah, I mean, my goodness, to believe the shit that they have said. I just like look at some of my friends, like some of my smart, professional, intellectual friends taking some of this propaganda in. I'm like, wait, you really believe that they cut off the breasts of women and played with them and then chopped off their heads and played football with them? What the New York Times reported? Like, you actually think? Wait, and that was only half of it. What else was said? They were like, oh yeah, they had one of them, they were gang raping a woman. They had her bent over a table. As he was penetrating her, he would stab her whenever she gasped in the back, stabbed her in the back whenever she gasped as he was raping her. And then cut off her breasts and then played with it, threw it back and forth, and then beheaded 3 women and played with their heads. And like people are like tweeting at me, they're like, "See, Thad, you're raped, and see, look, see, it's now now you feel terrible." Like Liz Wolfe at Reason magazine said this shit. I was like, you think that happened? Really? I mean, and why do they have to make up shit that's so fantastical? They pulled together 40 infants into a room and then chopped off all of their heads with machetes. 40 babies. They just methodically went to. They really think that happened? Amazing. I don't know what to do with that except to say there's some racism at work. I was thinking, I don't know, what would be the equivalent? Like, what if there was a news story that, I don't know, some American family, you know, named the Johnsons from, you know, Kansas City, went and beheaded 40 babies. I don't know, like it just would be like you would never, or Americans, like American soldiers did this in a war. You'd be like, they'd be, what? What do you mean they chopped off breasts and played with it? Like that's not even a thing. Like it's not even like in horror movies. Like that's there's not even a sadist fantasy I've ever heard of. Like what?
I don't know. I think Americans have been psyoped into oblivion forever. And I think Americans are so detached from war that they will believe anything. And we have a history of falling for atrocity, hook, line, and sinker every time it happens. Like we believe the babies in incubators lie. So,
no, I'm talking about political journalists believing this. I'm talking about like who are like radicals actually, like, or you know, or at least like, you know, like Reason magazine. Like Liz Wolfe saying that on Twitter, I just was stunned. And by the way, the Reason people just are horrible on this shit. They
Did you see
believe it all.
the Jeremy Kaufman's takedown of Reason magazine?
I am so no, I didn't. Good.
Uh,
What just came out? Like a video thing?
Well, he went on a tweet thread basically putting through his theory as to why the publication Reason doesn't advocate the interests of libertarians. He basically says that their donor base brings in like $1 million of revenue, and they get about $14 million of revenue from donors. And so they have like an outsized influence of donors who, instead of wanting to advance libertarian agendas, want to advance policy goals to the audience of libertarians.
Funny he says that, because I wrote for Reason many, many times. I haven't in several years now, and now I doubt I ever will again. I mean, maybe, but I'm not too fond of them these days. Since COVID, they've been pretty bad on major issues. So I wrote for them many times. I did several videos for them. I did interviews for Reason TV, many of them, and I got pushback only like 2 or 3 times, but every time it was from donors. And I was forwarded emails from donors who were outraged that I said this or that thing. So yeah, makes sense. That's part of it. I think it's deeper than that. But I mean, didn't I say this before about Reason? I don't know, Kara. I don't know how much the audience wants to know about this, but so Operation Mockingbird of the CIA was, we know this from documentation, was a multi-decade program in which the CIA informed major news outlets what to say about certain political issues. The CIA did not tell any newspaper what to say about movies or radio shows or the latest pop stars or local politics or even domestic national politics. The CIA didn't tell them to take any particular position on abortion or gay rights or civil rights or the economy or the Fed. None of that. But the CIA told every single newspaper and radio and television outlet for decades consistently, you obey us on foreign policy. What the State Department says is what you say. And that is what has happened in the media. And the media has been free generally to say what it wants about domestic stuff and cultural issues, but they have been, as you may have noticed, the establishment media has always said the exact same things on foreign policy. Always. There's been no disagreement. They were all for the Iraq War, they were all for the Vietnam War, they were all for the World War II, World War I, blah, 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 everything. But they had differences on abortion and gay rights and domestic politics and the economy. Some were liberal, some were conservative, but they all agreed that we had to go to war to protect the empire or to expand the empire, whatever. Well, I noticed when I started working for Reason magazine that they didn't have a regular reporter on foreign policy. They had people who did specialized in criminal justice, on economics, on First Amendment issues, on Second Amendment issues. They had specialists in all these big fields. No one was a specialist at Reason still to this day on foreign policy. They talk almost nothing at all about foreign policy. They don't say anything at all. Occasionally, though, they tisk at criticize the anti-war movement. That's mostly what they do. So they criticize people for being, for not condemning Hamas. They criticize people for not condemning Putin. Interesting. I mean,
yeah, they consider the piece that Jeremy Kaufman went after was one where they called Vivek a conspiracy theorist for going after J6ers for saying J6 might have been an inside job and that.
Right. And stuff like that too. So J6 is another thing the CIA would be interested in controlling the line on. Anything about Trump. Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm not accusing Reason of being under the influence of the CIA, but I'm kind of accusing Reason of being under the influence of the CIA. And now what I mean by that is not necessarily that the CIA is calling them up from Langley. I mean, but that they are part of a culture, and maybe they don't know it, but they're part of a culture in the media that's been created, manufactured, invented by the CIA. They literally write the narratives on foreign policy and give it to newsrooms. And they have done that since the 1950s. And therefore, if you think you are part of the mainstream media and you aspire to be part of the mainstream media, you know that people in the mainstream media are not going to let you on their shows if you say anything that might like be pro Hamas or like pro Putin or like pro Chavez. You know, if you're an anti-war person, you know what, anti-war people are never allowed in the mainstream media. Anyone notice that? Scott Horton's never, ever, ever seen a second in the mainstream media, except I think it was on Fox Business for like a minute. Yeah. So I think Reason had aspirations in part, and they also hang out with those people. They hang out sort of among mainstream media types. They're on MSNBC, they're on CNN, they're on Fox. And I don't know. I want to ask them. And I was thinking about actually having either Nick Gillespie or Matt Welch on the show and ask them directly, what's going on, guys? You're a libertarian magazine that has nothing to say against U.S. empire and foreign policy. What? How can this be? I mean, because every other libertarian, that's their number one cause. But y'all are like not only not interested in it, you're kind of vaguely pro U.S. empire. I'm very curious to know what that's all about.
We got to talk about Epstein. We only have like 10 minutes left now.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of foreign policy, so like what I'm mostly interested, well, I don't know. Here's what happened about 3 hours ago. I found out maybe everything I need to know. Maybe. Yeah. Almost everything I need to know. From Alan Dershowitz, who amazingly, I don't know if he's said this publicly before. Maybe he has, but to me, it's like an amazing almost admission, not just admission, but like admission of what is the state of Israel, Mossad, Jeffrey Epstein, Epstein Island is all about. He said on the Piers Morgan show today, which he was being interviewed by Douglas Murray, and he was with Eric Weinstein, which was sort of an interesting other piece of this. But he said that he was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein, Alan Dershowitz, who is currently serving as Israel's lawyer in the International Criminal Court, who has worked for the state of Israel as its lawyer multiple times over 50 years. He said that he was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein by Lady Rothschild of the Rothschild family, who founded the state of Israel. Now, I have no reason to think that Dershowitz had sex with any 16-year-old girls on Epstein Island or had sex with anybody. God forbid. I hope no one had to do that. But what I do now strongly suspect, and not just from this, but from a lot of other evidence, especially how Israel has acted and what I know about the Mossad, I mean, it must be a Mossad operation. He also said that Dershowitz actually doubled down on this because someone sort of expressed some curiosity. Oh, Lady Rothschild introduced you to Jeffrey Epstein. Why would the queen of the world, in many ways, the Rothschild family has been, and certainly the queen of Israel, no doubt, the Rothschilds funded the Zionist movement. Okay, they founded Israel. He said that she insisted that he meet with Epstein. Like she was insistent that he meet with Epstein and become friends with Epstein, which he did. Became very close with Epstein. Had 50 meetings, I think. That's the number. The whole thing about using what happened at Epstein Island as blackmail, leverage against all these powerful people sounds a lot like something either the CIA or Mossad would do. I mean, the CIA has been almost comically malicious and authoritarian and devious, and has shown itself to be absolutely capable of doing just about any crazy stunt. So it could be the CIA too, but it feels more like the Mossad because a lot of major US politicians, government officials, and people like Bill Gates, who have tremendous influence over the US government, are implicated. Not so many Israelis implicated. I don't know. What do you think? What do you know? You've read Whitney Webb's stuff, and I've heard that she's done the best work on this. I haven't actually gotten into her work, but
I've been frantically skimming all those articles from 2019, as we've been going. But yeah, Whitney Webb outlined all this. I mean, Robert Maxwell famously had his ties to Mossad. He sold software, spyware, to a bunch of people.
Right. Ghislaine Maxwell's father was. Wait, he was MI6.
He was an MI6 spy, but he also sold software that had Israeli spyware on it to give backdoor access. Yeah. Who did he sell it to? But
there was a heavy Mossad component to her family, right? To Ghislaine Maxwell's family. There's big Mossad presence there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But yeah, and then there's so much. Whitney Webb outlines a connection to Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
Really? And which is because he runs Palantir, and Palantir is working with the CIA on their data. But yeah, this is super, super involved, and you look like the guy with yarn and dots on a board to talk about all the connections. But yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I wanted to get to that connection because to me that, if it's true, would explain the whole thing, right? That it's a big blackmail operation used to basically enhance Israel's leverage against the United States.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, that's kind of how they operate. I mean, that's what they do in general, right? They do the emotional blackmail. They make us feel bad for opposing what they're doing. You're for beheading babies, huh? By calling for a ceasefire. Exactly what they've said. So why wouldn't they be willing to blackmail Bill Clinton in case he ever went off the reservation in regards to Israel? And boy, do they have more interest? Do they have more reason to do that now than ever? Now that we know that your generation is like anti-Zionist. When your generation becomes president and senators, I would imagine Israel's very concerned about this. So yeah, they're going to want to have some leverage. If I were like an aspiring politician in my 20s or 30s right now, I would I would not have sex with any woman except my wife.
The Mike Pence rule. Don't even be in a room with any woman except your wife.
Because she could be working for somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in this case, no kidding. By the way, the birthright trip, which my son is not considering anymore, but he was for a while considering doing, they pay for your trip to Israel when you're a kid, when you're a teenager. And Max Blumenthal said this, and I've heard it from other people too. A friend of mine, it's like a sex trip. And somehow you always end up having sex with an IDF soldier. I've had many friends all report back like specific details about sex with IDF soldiers, which makes sense too. Like, of course you're going to promote that. If I were running Israel, I would do the same thing. You want people to have, you want to make Jews, you want to make Israeli Jews, and you want American Jews to want to move there and love the place and feel good about it. And sure. So I can see, yeah, they're absolutely not above this. Also, I think they've done this kind of thing with Palestinians too. I think they've used, I know they've used a lot of sexual blackmail against Palestinians. So it's sure, I mean, it's again fulfilling the Jewish stereotype. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, I mean, the whole foundation of intelligence agencies are built on sexual blackmail.
That too,
Yeah,
yeah. Right.
it's
Yeah.
always been their practice.
It's so powerful.
But yeah, like I think that's the big thing. I think the documents that were released on the Epstein case are kind of a nothing burger. They were said to be a client list, but they weren't a client list. It was names that were unredacted in testimonial from one woman for like a period of a month.
Right.
And what's coming out in this release is like sensationalist stories about Stephen Hawking and David Copperfield. And so I think this batch of leaks were made to just get tabloid attention and sort of distract from the big Mossad blackmail scandal that Whitney Webb has been talking about since 2019.
Wow. Unlimited Hangout.
Yeah,
with
or
Whitney
limited
Webb.
hangout.
Unlimited Hangout with Whitney Webb. Yep, go check it out. I've heard from multiple people, people who I really respect say it's the state of the art on Epstein research. So yeah, go check her out. We got to go, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to talk about Claudine Gay at all?
I was just gonna say real quick, free Claudine Gay. No. Okay, let's do a minute or two on Claudine Gay.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, I wish we had had more time on that because it is, in some ways, I resent having to talk about it because I hate these places. Of course, I think anyone knows my career, knows my history, and knows my feelings on this. I mean, I hate higher education, the institution, the system profoundly, and I would love to see it burned to the ground, maybe even literally. I mean, it's absolutely a piece of shit, except for maybe the sciences, but certainly everything that she represents. I mean, good Lord. And Harvard in particular for multiple reasons, but okay. So she clearly plagiarized. She's clearly a plagiarist. According to the academic standards, she absolutely should be, I mean, fired. She should not ever be faculty. If she were a student, she should be expelled. Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, according to the rules of academia, okay, I happen to not care really about any of that. I mean, so what? Who cares? But number two, she's also very, very clearly, I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I would bet my life on it. She's a DEI hire. She had, what was it, 12 peer-reviewed journal articles, I think, for a political scientist in mid-career. That's a very low number. And she plagiarized them too. So, well, there you go. I mean, she didn't strike me as untalented. I think she's like, I think I can understand why they made her president. I mean, she's sort of good at that.
Well, here's the thing. If you're going to get rid of plagiarists, you have to get rid of Martin Luther King, and you got to get rid of Alan Dershowitz.
Yep. Norman Finkelstein busted Alan Dershowitz for his plagiarism, and Alan Dershowitz then devoted his life to destroying Norm Finkelstein's career. He waged a public relations campaign with every university in the country to stop them from hiring Norm Finkelstein. It just grotesque. Anyway, over their fight about Israel, by the way, that's what it was all about. Unreal. How ridiculous and petty. So I hate the whole thing. I mean, it's just, I hate everyone involved. Elise Stefanik versus Claudine Gay is like, I don't know, going back to Marvel, who are the two worst villains if they were fighting each other? I mean, they're the worst people making the worst arguments against each other. She also was targeted, and the only reason she has resigned, was forced to resign. The only reason people know who she is, or that she's a plagiarist, the only reason they did the research to find out that she was a plagiarist, is not that she's pro-Palestinian. She's not even pro-Palestinian. She's not even anti-Israel. The only reason they did any of this stuff is that she did not punish, was not willing to punish and suppress anti-Israel speech. I mean, that's it. And they went and crushed her, which again, the president of Harvard, and a black woman too, to pull down to knock off a black woman these days. Oh, think about that.
Mm-hmm.
How many black women have been like deposed?
Yeah, this might be the first.
Wow. Of course, the left is all saying it's because she's black. That's why this is racist. I'm like, wait a minute, it's the other way around, bro. The exception proves the rule. I mean, wait, think what was there? Has there been a black woman who's been like knocked down from a high position for something like this?
Well, no. I mean, there's ones that have lost elections, but there aren't like ones that have been like kicked out like this. I don't think
there was like a minor professor a couple of years ago who I think was ultimately fired for plagiarism, but like nobody. Yeah. So anyway, it's all about Israel.
Yeah.
I mean, the Claudine Gay story is all about Israel and Israel's attempt to suppress speech in our country, which is also amazing. Everything else you want to say about Claudine Gay is correct. Like all the things that Christopher Rufo just loves talking about, and oh God. Yeah, of course it's right. We've known that stuff forever. We know exactly what's going on at Harvard. No shit. They have a DEI black woman president. Is she gay too? I don't even know. I mean, is she lesbian too? No. Right, yeah.
Allegedly not.
Right. Is she related to Marvin? That's all I want to know.
Marvin added the E at the end of his name when he got into show business. Yeah.
I sure do.
Yeah.
There's a great biography of Marvin Gaye.
Yeah.
It's what's the guy's name? David Anyway, really beautiful biography of him. Everyone should read that.
One more thing I want to say about this.
Yeah.
She's being replaced interim by Alan M. Garber, who happens to be Jewish. This makes 6 out of 8 Ivy League presidents Jewish. And there's this opposition. Anti-woke people constantly say we have to be against diversity, equity, inclusion language. And I think this is a big sparkling realization of it, is that if you believe in racialist terms, and if you start thinking that disparities equal discrimination, you start noticing certain disparities, like 2% of the population makes up 2/3 of the presidents of our most...
Gotta go, Michael. See you later. All right. It's been a great show. Yeah, it's been a great show. We're now canceled, so I hope you're proud of yourself. Yeah. Well, Zog has been running things for a while now, and you have to accept it. But Zog runs YouTube, and Zog will do what it wants with us now.
But I agree with that point a little bit, in that, like, we've been forced racialized thinking down our throats when it comes to how blacks and women are represented in the world. And if you do an honest evaluation of that, you might come to certain conclusions that can scapegoat and castigate certain other minorities that happen to do well.
Yep. It's a bad idea in general.
Yeah.
Everyone look up Khazar theory, by the way. I mean, this whole thing about Jews being from Palestine is just hilarious. Ashkenazi Jews being from Palestine is just the highest comedy in the world. That I am somehow descended from Palestine. Like, really? Arab, really? Okay. The racial stuff is just nuts. And usually it can be funny in the hands of a Richard Pryor, or it can be murderous in the hands of a Bibi Netanyahu. So, all right, man. Yeah. Unregistered Live starts now. Michael and I go hang out on Zoom after every Unreported. And you can too. Go to patreon.com/unregistered, right there, that URL. Click there, become a member at any level, and join us at Unregistered Live at 5:30 or abouts every Thursday right after Unreported. It's really fun. So I'll see you there, and I'll see everybody else there soon. This was fun, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're the best. All right. Peace.